know when to take your child to see a paediatrician or even a psychiatrist? Well, for some people, you will have come across a paediatrician at the birth of your child. That's quite normal. They're part of that process. And you may have continued to have dealings with that paediatrician going forwards, or you may have had no more dealings with that paediatrician. It depends on your child and how they've developed. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, people are quite wary of psychiatrists. That seems quite dark. You only deal with them when there's something very, very serious happening. But a psychiatrist has qualifications that help with children with mental health disorders. And those two roles do overlap to a certain degree. So let's start with a paediatrician. So a paediatrician is a specialist doctor, so they're trained as a medical doctor and they've specialised in paediatrics, in development of children. And they can sign off and diagnose learning difficulties with children. They can look at for things like attention difficulties, for autism, and for a whole range of different difficulties, whether that be social emotional or whether that be actual physical disabilities. For example, a child may have been to see the psychologist, and the psychologist has flagged that maybe the child has autism, or they may have flagged that maybe the child has attention difficulties. The paediatrician works at a slightly higher level, and he can sign, or she can sign off on those difficulties and say, yes, I have the evidence, they meet the medical criteria. So what does a psychiatrist do? So again, a psychiatrist is a qualified medical doctor, but they've specialised in psychiatry. They specialised in mental health. So they can help your children with lots of different things. They can actually help with attention difficulties. They can help with depression, anxiety, or they can help with things like conduct disorder. And they can provide therapy, they can provide different counselling techniques, and they can also provide medication. So they can, sometimes the paediatrician and the psychiatrist work together, and sometimes they work in isolation. Both of them can prescribe medication above that which is allowed by your GP. However, to go and see either a paediatrician or a psychiatrist, you do need a referral, certainly in Australia, to see either of those specialists. And your GP will be able to give you some guidance about which is the best person to go and see. Is it a psychiatrist for this issue you're dealing with? And psychiatrists can be great for different issues. And a paediatrician, again, definitely specialist in different areas, but there is that overlap. So, how do I get the appointment? Go see your GP. Maybe take some information from school that will help. If you've been to see a speech pathologist or an occupational therapist or a psychologist, take their information too, because their information will support the need to see one of these specialists, and that information will provide those specialists with information to help them make a correct diagnosis. And I've said before, sometimes the paediatrician will send you for more information. They've got to get that diagnosis right. I don't want the paediatrician making a diagnosis that says this child's got autism based on absolutely no evidence apart from a 10-minute interview that they just had with the child. I'd much prefer that they sent you to go and get some extra support and to get some extra diagnostic information to support them to make that correct diagnosis. It can take a long time to get in to see one of these specialists, so if you're thinking, oh, maybe I should, then book an appointment. You can also go on something called the Cancellation List, whereby if there's somebody cancels, then you may get the phone call to say, I've got an appointment tomorrow, would you like to take it? And if you're in a flexible position, or you're in a position where you really, really need this, you could just say, yep, I'll be there tomorrow. I remember a few years ago, it was the last day of the school term, and I think 3 different students got a cancellation appointment with the same paediatrician on that day. It was unbelievable. They were, we got an appointment yesterday, so we're off. And it was great because they got to see earlier than they thought they would. If it's really, really, really urgent, see your GP and they can get you an urgent appointment. But most of the time it's not going to be deemed urgent unless there's, life at risk. So if it is really urgent, please see your GP and they will be able to get you an emergency appointment. So I hope that's given you some understanding about the difference between a psychiatrist and a paediatrician and which one to see and when.